Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around, I want to show you this new drum machine for iPad I just found. It's called Ton.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Okay, guys, so this isn't a new drum machine. I believe it came out sometime in 2017. In fact, Doug Woods from the Sound Test Room has already done a really nice review and walkthrough of this app. It had a different graphic user interface at that time. The interface is a little bit different now, and I think this is an amazing app. I just found out about it yesterday on the iPad Musician Facebook group. If you're on Facebook and you make music on an iPad, I highly recommend checking out the iPad Musician group on Facebook. So let me start off by playing you a couple of beats that I've made so far with the amp. Here's the first one. Now, one of the things that makes this really neat, guys, is a feature called parameter locks. Now, I don't have any Electron hardware, but I, see people who have the Electron hardware, doing a lot of live jamming with the Electron hardware, and people seem to really like the Electron hardware. It's really popular. I guess one of the features that has is something called parameter locking, and when I heard that this app can do that, I was very intrigued to check that out because I don't have an Electron to check that out. So let's load up the second beat that I made. We'll go back to projects. We'll click this one. This is some dub techno samples that I loaded up into the app. These are all my own sounds. It is a free app, but to get sample import feature unlocked, it's an in-app purchase of $9.99, which I took care of so that we can go ahead and play with some samples today. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a beat from scratch with some samples that I've imported. I'm going to show you some of the things that you can do with this parameter locking and why I think this app is so special. Stick around and check it out. Just want to let you guys know that there is a crash that happens for me pretty consistently with this app. I'm using an iPad Air 2, and if I try to preview their factory samples, it hard crashes the app every time. So if we click there, you'll see that, we get a hard crash on the app, and we'll need to restart the app. I'm not really sure what that's about, but we get around that by working with, in the user library, my own samples, which seem to preview just fine. We're going to go ahead and click the projects. We'll click over to the left here to get to our main project window, and we'll click the plus button, which will load us a new project with their default sounds, which are, usable, but you can't preview them without the app crashing, so that's kind of a bummer. For now, we're not going to worry about the, default samples, and we're going to go ahead and X out all the samples that have been loaded into the sample pool. I'm going to call this the sample pool over here on the right, and over here we've got our, sample browser. We can load up to 128 samples apparently into the sample pool. I haven't loaded that many. How I'm getting my user samples inside the app is I'm using a software for the PC called iMazing, and it allows me to connect the iPad to my PC and then just drag and drop samples into the directory here. I highly recommend the iMazing software if you're a PC user who's also using iPad. But what we can do is we can go to the user library, and I can just start importing some of these samples into the user pool. This can be a little bit time consuming. So if I find it odd that you can't actually click on the bar to preview the sample, you have to actually click on a little play button, but it is what it is. I've loaded quite a few samples here, and let's go down just a little bit. Let's just grab this one for now. Maybe grab a couple of other kick drums for now as well. You need to do a long press on the sample, and then you can just drag it into the sample pool. Again, we're supposed to be able to load 128 samples here. Let's go ahead, and I've got some samples here that I've imported from a dub techno sample library that I purchased. And let's see, grab some of these hi-hats. You'll see why we're grabbing multiple samples in just 1 second. That's sort of the beauty of these parameter locks. What we're going to be able to do is assign different samples to different steps in our sequence. You'll see what I mean in just a sec. Just kind of try to grab enough of these samples so that we have enough sounds to work with in the example. Let's grab a whole bunch of these dub percussion sounds. Now we could sit here, and preview the sounds, but for this tutorial and for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and drag a bunch of random stuff into our sample pool. Let's grab all these different ride samples in. Now, these don't have to be drum sounds. That's the beauty of this app, you guys. This could be like vocal samples. These could be bass one-shots or, chord stabs, and you name it. It's really going to be limited to just the imagination of what you want to import in here and how creative you want to get, when you're sequencing that stuff out. I'm literally just grabbing random samples here, guys. This is like some snare drums. I'm going to grab... Oh, great. Here, why not? Let's grab this cool chord stab over here. This is basically a lot of samples that I imported. I'd like to write in the key of F minor, so a lot of these are just, samples from my collection that are in the key of F minor and just kind of ready to go. Let's bring in some open hats. Again, we could preview this, all you want, but to try to, you can see it takes, a bit of time. So I'm just kind of trying to go quickly. Let's bring in like some rims, whatever. Just shakers. Cool. Okay, so let's give a start here. What we've got is it's going to go ahead and load from our sample pool. Like it'll load the first samples onto our pad. So it's going to start with the kick drum that we loaded, and we can put in, let's do like not a 4 on the floor pattern this time. Okay, cool. What we can do is if we click on the master, you can adjust your tempo, you can adjust your reverb send settings and your delay send settings. But for now, we're just not going to worry about those at all. We're just going to worry about the actual kick drum patterning. Okay, so to get the parameter locks happening, you just hold a note and basically you make an adjustment, and that's it. Now that note says 1 lock, and you can, any of these settings you can adjust for just this one step in just this one track. So what we've done here is I've held this down and I've adjusted the decay on just that sample to be real tight so that it'll leave room for this snare that's going to happen right here. What we could do is in the sample tab, we can click this down and we can affect our tuning of this sample. If we want this to snap to whole numbers, we can click the snap button, hold this down. That's just that one step. And now you'll hear that change a little bit. It'll pop out of the mix when we add a snare a little bit per se. So if I click over to the next track, I'm on select. If I click over to the next one, puts in another 16th note grid, and I'll put a snare, part on there, and then in the sample pool we're going to assign a sound to that. So what I'll do is just scroll through some of these sounds that we've loaded and see if I can't find a snare. I'll just go with that for now. And what we can do is start making some variations to that part immediately using these cool parameter lock functions. Okay, so if I put another note in, like a 90s house snare kind of thing, and we do a long press hold on that, it starts flashing, and now we can make any adjustments we want to just that step alone. So I can make the decay tighter on that step. I can make maybe it pan a little bit to the left. It goes all the way to 100 for hard left, all the way to 90 rather. And if I go the other direction, that's panning at 90, to the right. I can bring the level on that down to all the way, gone, but of course we want it to be there a little bit. We can put some delay on just that one hit. We can put some reverb on just this one hit. We can go into the master menu. Maybe make this a dark reverb by bringing the dampening down, and push the feedback up just a little. Now you hear that the reverb is happening just on that one snare. We could put you know, in the amplitude menu, we could hold this step and put a little tiny bit of the reverb on the first snare too. Really tiny. Let's add another sound. Okay, so I'll just click the next track available. This is our track 3. And let's see, let's assign a hi-hat to this off the jump. But we're going to get really creative here and use this parameter lock function to put different samples on the same track. I'll show you what I mean. We'll leave maybe this first step on the quarter notes empty, and we'll just put 1 2 3 1 2 3 kind of a pattern. And what we can do is, right now I've got it set to hi-hat number 6, so it's going to play that sample all the way across. But if I long press one of these, and if I change that to a different hi-hat sample, I'll do that again on the second one in the mix here, in this groups of 3, I'm changing that second hi-hat to a different hi-hat sound all the way across. And you'll see now each of those steps that has a parameter lock on it, it says 1 lock. Let's see here. Let's pick maybe a third hi-hat sound to go on, but, a different third hi-hat sound to go on each of these third. So now we're literally putting together, a hi-hat track with 5 or 6 different hi-hat samples. Who knows what this will sound like? We could have made these adjustments in real time as the beat was playing and been maybe more careful about selecting the sounds, but this sounds pretty good already. So in the amplitude menu, if we, affect these settings here, we're making settings that are affecting the entire track, not just the individual notes. So we can effectively, bring the hats down in the mix here by just moving this knob. Not knob, but adjustment, you know what I mean. So, if I bring it down to 0, we're not hearing those hats at all. So we still have complete control over the level. And we've got 3 tracks, but we're using so many different samples now. We could even do the same thing with our snare track. We could put in 2 extra notes here, right? And then click our sample pool, long press those notes, and maybe pick a different snare. Maybe we could, in the amplitude menu, hold this down and bring these down in level to say 50. And then maybe we could do some panning on those. Pan the first one left and pan the, back to 50. Pan this one right. Maybe put another snare here. But go back to our sample pool and change that to a different sound, Then we could go back to the amplitude menu. We could hold this down, bring it down in the mix, pan it a little. Maybe put some delay and reverb on just that note. In our sample menu, we have, some filter settings, so we can change the filter settings for every step as well. We can hold this down and change this from a low-pass filter to maybe a high-pass filter. Bring that frequency right down to maybe, 1,000. And if we go back into the amplitude menu, maybe we crank up the delay and the reverb on that one note. Maybe we give it a little bit more level in the mix. You get the drift. Okay, so let's start putting in some more content here. We got some patterns on track 1, track 2, and track 3. If I select, the fourth one, let's maybe put in a 8th notes here. Maybe go to our sample menu and maybe pick a ride, but maybe we'll, every other ride, maybe we'll change. So maybe we'll change between ride 3 and ride 4, and then maybe on this last ride, we'll make it ride 5. Maybe we'll put in an extra ride way at the end. Maybe we'll hold that one and scroll down and put in ride 7. Where was that at? Or maybe an open hat there. It doesn't even have to be that. That's what's, really the beauty of this is that, you can put different sounds on every step on the same track. So that open hi-hat's a little loud. I can hold the step, go to the amplitude menu, and bring that level down a little. Maybe pan that a little to the left. Now if we bring this down, it's the whole track. So you can still mix that in. Okay, let's go over. Excuse me. We'll go over to the next empty one. Maybe let's just put something on the downbeat, and maybe I don't know on these ones here. And let's put some melodic content on this one. So if we go back to the sample menu, when nothing is being pressed, we're going to pick the sample. That's just the main sample for the whole track, right? For the whole track. Cool. But let's make it so that hits on the downbeat, but different samples hit on these, right? So I've got these chord stabs. They're labeled as to the key of F minor. I believe these are from my Devious Dub Techno sample pack that we're working with right here. And fantastic. Let's put another one here. So if I put in a note and I don't change the parameter lock, it's going to just play, the main sample for that track. But if I hold it, then I can scroll and literally pick any sample from the sample pool I want. If we want to add more samples, I go back to Manage Samples, and I'll just, scroll down to some empty space here in the sample pool. I'll long press on a sound, just randomly. And I can add more sounds. Apparently, like I said, we can add 128 sounds to the sample pool. So I can, put a note here, hold that note, and change what it's going to play. That's pretty nice. I can go to the amplitude, and I can bring the decay on that down and make it real tight. Then we can maybe put some delay and some reverb on just that stab. Cool. Maybe bring it down in the mix a little bit and pan it to the right. Let's go ahead and go to our last available track, and let's just, put in some random notes here. Let's go to our sample pool. Maybe we'll start with some percussion. Scroll through till we find something that's cool. That's pretty cool. If we hold these, we can adjust the tuning. So maybe we can bring this first note an octave up, maybe this second note an octave down, and just sort of randomly vary this up. Okay, now the ones that we've adjusted, they say one lock, and the one that we haven't adjusted are just the note. We can do some panning on these. We could hold this, and we could go to amplitude, pan that left, maybe pan that right, maybe pan that left, maybe pan that right, maybe pan that left. So this, again, guys, this is parameter locking, to where we're locking these different parameters to each individual step. So now you can really hear the different tuning changes that are happening on the different notes. Again, we could maybe pick one of these and crank up the delay and the reverb on just that one there. Maybe we put a little bit of reverb on that first one. Maybe a little bit of delay on that, last one. This is all just personal preference and just kind of messing around. Let's see here. Let's unmute the rest of these. Let's say you're pretty happy with your work, and you want to save this. We're going to go into the Patterns menu. We're going to click Store Pattern. You could select any of these from 1 to 16. We'll just put that in Pattern 1. I like how it kind of shows you a visual representation of the grid. That's kind of cool. So you can make all sorts of variations, and you could change these in real time as you're live jamming. This has got Ableton Link, so it's going to sync up with your other iPad apps, and also, with your Ableton Live on your laptop and whatnot. Really, really handy. Let's see, what else? If we'd like to make some longer patterns as opposed to just this 1-bar loop that we're working with now, that's super easy to do as well. Any of the 6 tracks can have either a 1, 2, or 4-bar pattern, maybe even 3, I'm not sure. But so let's say if we want to make some variations on our kick pattern, we can make sure that we've got select chosen. We can click the kick drum, and here's our pattern for that track. It shows us here that it's a 1-bar part, and if we click that, we can make this 2 bars. it'll automatically copy what you've got in the first bar over to the second bar, and now it's got, little highlighted numbers as to which bar you're actually viewing. So if we click bar 2, we could add a couple of extra kick drums as like a turnaround. Maybe we hold this one down and maybe give this like -2 semitones on the tuning. Maybe we give that a little bit of saturation just for fun. I think a little saturation goes a long way, just a personal opinion. We can unsnap this at any time to get more finite control over those numbers. Click this again and bring that attack just a little. Okay. Maybe bring the level on this down. Maybe bring the level on these way down. Yeah. Nice. So this is our kick track, but just to, again, highlight the fact that we can put any sound on any step in any track, I'm going to add a chord sample right there on the kick track. So let's highlight that, or, hold it, not highlight it, but just, hold it. We'll change to the sample view, and I'm just going to scroll to one of these, there we go, cool. One of these chord stabs over here. And now, so I'll mute the other tracks, and you'll hear what we're done here. So we could go in here, we could go to the amplitude, and we could crank that delay up all the way so it plays the full sample. It's going to cut off when it hits the next note. That's pretty cool. We could put a high pass filter on just that note. Maybe make that decay not all the way. Maybe do some panning. You get the idea. It's really about pressing, holding rather, the note that you want to affect, making a bunch of settings, and it's going to remember that. It's going to lock it to that step on that track. So it's really just about as much experimentation as you guys can think of and as creative as you can get. I hope this has, been helpful to introduce this drum machine to you. And be sure and stay tuned for more shenanigans.